What did you find after someone died that changed everything you thought about them? I found my dad's secret notebook filled with homework problems he'd been teaching himself for years, and realized the man who called himself not the smart one was actually a genius who worked harder than I ever knew. My dad barely graduated high school and always said, "I'm not the smart one in this family, that's you," or "Your mom got all the brains, I just got the work ethic." He worked construction and seemed genuinely intimidated by anything academic. But whenever I struggled with homework, especially math and science, my dad could somehow explain things better than my teachers. I'd be stuck on an algebra problem for hours. Dad would sit down, look at it for a minute, and break it down in this simple, clear way that made everything click. He'd use analogies about construction that made abstract concepts concrete. When I struggled with physics, he'd explain momentum using hammers. Chemical equations became recipes. His explanations were so good that I'd actually understand the concepts. I thought he got lucky with his guesses about how to solve problems. When I'd say, "Dad, you should have been a teacher," he'd laugh and say, "I barely made it through school myself. I just got lucky figuring out how to explain it to you." This went on all through high school. No matter how advanced the subjects got, Dad could help me work through it, but he always acted like he was just winging it. When he died of a heart attack 2 years ago, I had to go through his belongings. That's when I found the notebook in his toolbox. When I opened it, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Page after page of my homework problems. Not just the ones I'd shown him, but variations he'd made up himself. Step-by-step solutions in his careful handwriting, over and over again. Algebra equations solved multiple ways. Physics formulas derived from scratch. Chemistry problems with detailed explanations in the margins. Each page dated. He'd been doing this for years. There were pages where you could see him struggling, crossing things out, trying again. Pages where he'd copied problems from my textbooks and worked through them methodically. In the back, I found lists, topics to study, quadratic equations, Newton's laws, balancing chemical equations. I sat in his workshop crying, realizing that every time he'd said, "I just got lucky," he'd actually been working harder than I ever imagined. He hadn't gotten lucky. He'd been staying up late teaching himself algebra, physics, chemistry, all so he could help me with homework. The man who called himself not smart had essentially given himself a high school education in secret. I found out later he'd been checking out library books on math and science for years, always asking for beginner books on whatever I was studying. 7 years of secretly educating himself, just so he could be there when I needed help. The notebook changed everything I thought I knew about my dad. He wasn't getting lucky with his teaching. He was preparing, studying, practicing. He was brilliant, not in the way he thought intelligence was supposed to look, but in the way that actually mattered. I keep that notebook on my desk now. When I'm struggling with something, I think about my dad staying up late, teaching himself physics, just because he loved me enough to try. The man who spent his whole life believing he wasn't intelligent was actually the smartest person I've ever known.